Krishna all. Thank you for joining. We are continuing our discussion on the modes of nature. Okay, so let me share the screen. So this is where we had left, chapter 14. We are done till. Okay. So start with text 14. It talks about the different destinations. When one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages. So dying in the mode of goodness is not being attached to this material world, having conception of divinity, conception of the Supreme Lord, and like somebody, for example, a yogi who dies in the mode of goodness, they can achieve these higher planets. These higher planets are higher than the heavenly planets, because in the heavenly planets there's a lot of mode of passion there for enjoyment. Although there is predominantly goodness, but there is a facility for enjoyment. In these higher planets like Janaloka, Brahmaloka, Tapoloka, it's primarily meant for meditation, and the sages go there. So Krishna says you can attain to those higher planets if you die in the mode of goodness. Now, where would you go if somebody died in the mode of passion? Before we read from the verse directly, what would be the destination of somebody dying in the mode of passion? Somebody from our newer group.
Can't hear you. I think someone's typing,
I think go to lower planets.
Go to lower planets. Okay, that is one option.
I think stay on the same planet they're at.
Yeah, that's what Krishna says, that
in a different species, maybe.
when one
Are
dies,
they born in an animal body, Prabhuji? They're reborn in an animal body?
Okay, so let's read that. I think it'll
Yeah.
clarify. When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. So depending on what mode we are in, right, we have different destinations. And, it may seem like maybe there is, so what's really happening here is that material nature is simply facilitating our desire, right? So if someone is very much in the mode of ignorance means, for example, somebody just loves to sleep, right? So they get a human body, but then they sleep all day and they don't have, unregulated, completely unregulated lifestyle. Then material nature says, well, for this kind of lifestyle, this body is really not truly suited, so
or they are in intoxication, different kinds of addictions and intoxications. They have no time of doing anything. They just do things which are in ignorance. So they take birth in the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom or the insect kingdom. This is lower than the humans.
Just like, and it's kind of, it's really interesting, because if you think about it, the plants, I mean the trees, right, they stand without any clothing, right? And so, and then there are so many different kinds of animals where one can actually enjoy much better facilities for sense enjoyment. So material nature simply facilitates that.
Some background noise coming, please mute yourself.
Okay.
Vishal, did I give you the
Yes, Prabhuji, I'm recording.
the result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness, but action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. So interesting that in the mode of passion we think that we'll get some happiness. That's why people are engaged in the mode of passion, creating different things, trying to achieve different things, go. But that mode of passion basically results in misery. any fruitive activity results in misery. And ignorance results in foolishness. Foolishness means we do really something harmful for ourselves. And that's what foolishness means. So it's even more than misery. So passion is misery, but ignorance is even worse than misery. Prabhupada says, as far as the mode of ignorance is concerned, the performer is without knowledge, and therefore all his activities result in present misery, and afterwards he will go on towards animal life. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. And from the mode of ignorance develops foolishness, madness, and illusion. So this is kind of an intermediate cause that Krishna gives. That from the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops, and from knowledge, pureness comes. From mode of passion, greed develops, and from greed, misery comes. And from mode of ignorance, foolishness, madness, and illusion, which basically results into more foolishness, madness, and illusion.
It's kind of interesting that how in the mode of passion, there's greed that develops. And so, we can see that the more we get, the more we desire to get. And so it's like a fire that just keeps on burning, right? And so, and ignorance, it just leads to madness and illusion. The person is, so addicted that cannot, distinguish between what is harmful and what is beneficial. And we see that so much right now in the world. As we're reading, we can see that we are, this particular age that we live in is characterized by a lot of mode of passion and a lot of ignorance, and very, very, very little goodness, right? And we'll see that as we read different things in different modes.
So the same point is repeated again in the destination. Urdhvam gachanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna vittistha adogachatni tamasa. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets. There are many earthly planets, not just this planet. There are many other earthly planets in this. They are considered like the middle planetary system. And those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. So they are lower planets where somebody in the mode of ignorance goes. When one sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. So both the things are required, that understanding how the modes work, and then becoming an observer of the modes rather than being entangled by the modes, and working towards becoming free from these modes with the knowledge that Krishna is transcendental to these modes. Because as long as we think that God himself is bound by these modes, then who is going to free us from these modes?
And it's kind of interesting that when one properly sees that no other performer is at work than these modes of nature. So Krishna also says that earlier, right? That actually we are not the doer, right? Everything that's happening is actually being done by the three modes. So again, that point is being repeated, but then, just like that question may come, then what's my responsibility? So I desire, and based on my desire, the modes actually facilitate my desire. So an example would be like a machine. So what I have to do is I have to turn on the switch, right? So I turn on the switch, and when I turn on the switch, the machine starts to operate, and then it manufactures or produces something. So actually the machine is doing everything, but I'm still turning on the switch.
Yeah, I'm the effective cause, the machine is the immediate cause, and the parts of the machine or other ingredients that are needed to make the object that I'm making, they are the ingredient cause. So there's so many different causes. So I definitely have if somebody uses a gun to say kill somebody, so they can't say, oh, the gun is responsible, I'm not responsible. So the modes of nature are like the instrument. So things are being done by the modes of nature, but we are responsible for doing anything. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. And Prabhupada says that, maybe you can read the short purport. How one can stay in the transcendental position, even in this body, in full Krishna consciousness, is explained in this verse. The Sanskrit word dehi means embodied. Although one is within this material body, by his advancement in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. He can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life even in this body, because after leaving this body, he's certainly going to the spiritual sky. But even in this body, he can enjoy spiritual happiness. In other words, devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the sign of liberation from material entanglement, and this will be further explained in chapter 18. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, he enters into devotional service. So interesting point that even from the very beginning, when we start executing devotional service, although we may be most imperfect, but devotional service and the practice itself, they are free from the modes of nature.
Actually, an example that Prabhupada gives is that just like one may want to cross a vast ocean, right? And so one is not perfect. One hasn't crossed the ocean. One simply gets on a boat. So getting on the boat is basically getting on the boat of this Krishna consciousness, right? So you are no longer touched by the ocean, the waves of the ocean. However, even when we are in the boat, we still experience the turbulence of the ocean, right? So we may feel like, yeah, I am practicing, but I'm still affected by all these things, right? So I haven't really transcended it. But the fact is that because we are in the boat, but because that boat is still within that ocean, so we may experience some ups and downs, but as long as we stay in that boat, we will not be touched by that ocean, or rather we won't drown in that ocean. So that's what it means that, when we start our spiritual life, our Krishna consciousness, then one becomes free from birth, death, old age, and disease, and their distresses, even though we may not experience it right away, and we may even feel that we are being tossed around.
That's a very good example. Like in the ocean, there's so much water. You're continuously surrounded by water, but you're not touched by it.
Yeah.
So Arjuna is now asking these questions to Krishna to help us understand how to transcend these modes, because Krishna is talking about getting over these modes. Arjuna inquired, "Oh my Lord, by which symptoms one is known? Is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior and how does it transcend the modes of nature?" So,
It's a very similar question.
very similar questions, yeah. So how do we know? And then especially for ourselves, how do we know that we are transcending these modes? What is our behavior?
Maybe we should ask that question first and see what are the symptoms by which one can know that one is transcending these modes. How would I know?
You feel more attracted to Krishna,
Okay.
and you don't feel the need to get more material, positions or whatever. So you sort of slowly start losing interest in that.
Okay. So anybody else? If you start feeling more attraction, and you don't feel
It doesn't matter to you as much whether things are going well or poorly in your life.
Yes. So the dualities, right? They stop affecting you when one is experiencing happiness or distress. Yeah, nice. Anshu.
Hare Krishna Mataji Prabhuji. You find more satisfaction in talking about Krishna, and you don't find enjoyment in probably just chit-chatting with other people or discussing people's life. You find more interest in discussing about Krishna and Bhagavad Gita and all the books.
Very nice. Very nice.
Our taste buds change basically.
We start experiencing a higher taste, right? So then we know that the modes are no longer affecting us.
You connect everything that you do and experience back to Krishna. Whatever you do, whatever you intake, whatever you eat, whatever you just everything. It's not just you anymore.
Very nice. Very nice.
Dominic, any thoughts from you? How do we know somebody is transcending modes of nature?
I actually, that was kind of the question I had, like trying to see the difference between like being stuck in the mode of goodness and like living a spiritual life, and like whether to tell if you're in that bondage or whether you've actually transcended all three of the modes.
Very nice.
Very nice question. So it's easy to see passion and ignorance, but the mode of goodness is how do we know whether we are transcending mode of goodness is by that we are not just attached to the peace. We are not just attached to having a good, clean life, or just being a good person. That is not sufficient for us. We, as many of you have shared, we want to get over this body, and we are attracted to Krishna, as many of you shared. So that is a symptom of somebody who's transcending mode of goodness.
At the same
Yeah,
time,
or
yes, go ahead.
maybe we experience oneness with everyone. Like, I don't feel like if I am practicing something, I don't feel like I'm superior. I just experience oneness, that I'm no different from anybody. And whether somebody is practicing or not, I feel that oneness with Krishna and with all of his creation.
Yeah, we see ourselves as a servant of the servant of the servant, right? So we are able to see our relationship is one of service. I was also going to make another point that even though we want to transcend the mode of goodness, at the same time, in the practice of bhakti, we actually try to stay on the platform of goodness, right? So in order to transcend the mode of goodness, during our practice stage, we have to sort of maintain that mode of goodness. So in the foods that we eat, the kind of music that we listen to, we try to, because it's easy. Mode of goodness is sort of like a launching pad. So if you're on the mode of goodness, as much to the extent that we are in the mode of goodness, to that extent, it's easy for us to transcend it. And the transcending part is simply adding Krishna to everything. So we may be very drawn to, for example, a classic example would be that for myself, I may be very attached to just living in the forest. You know, I wish I could have a house by a beautiful pond and I just go away in solitude and I just experience nature. And that may be my mode of goodness, attachment. But all the great teachers, they would actually leave the peaceful, quiet settings and try to come and live in the cities, you know, where people are and where people are struggling. So we can see how, you know, a person who would be purely attached to goodness would say, no, I cannot sacrifice my peace and my happiness in this forest life.
And I'm not going to take any risks to like share Krishna with others. I just want my own
Happiness.
bubble.
Yeah, my own bubble.
Goodness bubble.
So that would be one way that we might, or we may get stuck. That life is so good, you know. Yeah, everything is wonderful. I wonder why people talk about dissatisfaction, because I found again that goodness bubble, right? So one is able to go past that. One doesn't get stuck or attached to that bubble, but rather sees it as a good launching pad.
And then the other we can become attached to or conditioned by goodness is that measuring everything from from the point of view or the platform of mundane morality or mundane goodness. That God also has to behave through in the same way, and everybody else as his devotees also have to behave or just work according to the mundane mode of goodness.
Yeah, like morality,
Yeah.
right? Becoming overly, of course, devotees are always moral, they are always honest, but at the same time, they're not attached just to morality for the sake of morality, right? So, so for example, you know, when we hear about how Krishna would dance with the gopis in the middle of the night, then a person who's a strict moralist is going to, you know, feel really, really outraged.
How can God do this? How can God do that?
Right. So, but when we understand that there are things that operate in this platform of purified goodness, then one can appreciate and understand that reality. So I hope that helps, Dominic. Yeah.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
I have a question, Mataji.
Yes.
So we have three modes, right? The goodness, ignorance, passion. We talk about goodness a lot. About passion and ignorance, they also created by Krishna. Are they all bad, or they were created for a reason, like to see the suffering, or what was the main reason behind creating the ignorance? I mean, when we know it's so bad.
Question. Ignorance, the main reason behind creating ignorance is to facilitate our forgetfulness of Krishna, because in this material world is primarily, there are passion and ignorance, but this material world primarily is ignorance. Tama, it's called the Tamo Loka. This is primarily ignorance. passion is there because some creation needs to happen. If everything is dark and nothing happens, like in the beginning, there is only darkness and there's nothing there. So when Brahma comes out of the navel of Vishnu, he sees there is only darkness. And this like wind is blowing like crazy and in the water of devastation. And he just like totally freaked out. He says, how am I going to do anything here? There's nothing to be done. What am I going to do? What am I supposed to do? So ignorance is basically the nature of this world. And Krishna then, he presents him a plan, and then slowly passion, he gives him the passion to create this world and the intelligence to create this world. That is all the function of passion. And then he gives him the goodness, and the Vedas are manifested in his heart, so that now people can actually come out of this world.
And actually, all three modes have their utility or their connection to Krishna. So, for example, and we'll talk more about this later, that the four Varnas in ashram, right? So the four Varnas specifically. So Arjuna, when he's fighting in the battlefield, right, he's engaging the mode of passion in the service of Krishna. Because in order to be a warrior, you have to have passion, right? Lord Shiva, he is in charge of the mode of ignorance. So he uses this mode of ignorance to destroy this universe. So ignorance is used for destruction. Passion is used for creation, and maintenance is sustained by goodness. So all three have their purpose in the creation, maintenance, and the dissolution of this universe. And so it is with us as well, that, you know, we have to go to sleep at night, right? Sleep is such an important component, not just of our life, but even of our intelligence, right? So sleep is required. So that's ignorance, right? We need some activity. We've talked in such great detail about activity and how we need to engage in some work. So that's mode of passion, but that can be all purified. So when a devotee goes to sleep, even the sleep of a devotee is actually is different, right? It's being used in the service of Krishna. We sleep so that we can wake up fresh, so that we can serve Krishna, right? We work so that that work and the fruit of that work can be offered for the satisfaction of Krishna. So everything is now being offered. Everything is getting purified. The act of procreation is an act of passion, right? Anger is an act of ignorance, but even anger can be used in the service of Krishna. So one has to just learn the fine art of using or dovetailing these modes in the service of Krishna.
So yeah, your original question, are they ignorance and passion because Krishna created them, are they bad? I mean, in that sense, I mean, nothing is bad and nothing is good. That's what Krishna is going to end this chapter with. There's nothing is good and nothing is bad. They have their purpose, and those who know the purpose, they will use them. And those who are not, who don't have that knowledge, and therefore one needs to understand about these modes, and then you can transcend them.
It's like a knife that a surgeon has in his hand.
I also have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So when we use these modes in Krishna service, it's no more that mode, right? Like we have, it is, it's beyond goodness, isn't it? Like
yes. Like passion, like Prabhupada, you can see Prabhupada was so passionate. You see, at the age of 70, Harvard came to America. So the passion is no longer mundane passion. It is now transcendental affection. The counterpart of mundane passion in the spiritual realm is this transcendental affection between Krishna and his devotees. And Krishna is, there's one place in Bhagavatam is described that Krishna looks at his devotees. Krishna's glance is like filled with that transcendental passion. And then when Krishna looks at his devotees in that way, then the devotees' hearts are filled with spiritual desires. So mundane passion creates mundane desires in our heart. I want to enjoy this. I want to get this. I want to buy that. Those are all mundane. Those are mundane desires. But transcendental passion, which is increasing desires to serve Krishna in different ways, and that is beyond mundane goodness also.
And that's why sometimes when we read about Krishna's pastimes, you know, they appear, right? Like they are within the three modes. And this is a really important point, that, you know, to understand what is within the modes and what is not. So Krishna also exhibits anger. Krishna also exhibits lust, right? When he's dancing with the gopis. But that has nothing to do with material lust or material anger or material anything. right? So one has to see, what is what, and one can see that through the eyes of the scriptures. That's how one can see what is a distinction. So we can,
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on this? So everything can be used in the service of the Lord, but say suppose I have some passionate quality which I can use it for serving Krishna, but then because I still have that, so I might use it for Krishna, but I'll also exhibit it with misbehaving with people, right? Or maybe so. How does it work in that sense? I can use it right now if I have a passion to do a lot of. I don't know how to give an example right now, but I'll use it for Krishna service, but at the same time, because those qualities are still there with me, because I'm dealing with the material world, right? So I'll also exhibit those qualities. Then how does it work?
So yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, right? That nothing is perfect in the beginning, and that there will be, one time Prabhupada, somebody told Prabhupada that sometimes, Prabhupada, I feel like I'm fallen. And Prabhupada said, you're fallen most of the time. Sometimes you're Krishna conscious, right? So it is to be expected that, we are going to be imperfect, and much as we try to engage our passion or to engage our nature in Krishna's service, we are going to experience that nature is going to be very, very powerful. And Krishna says, what can repression accomplish? We cannot really repress that nature, but what we can do is that by engaging that nature in Krishna's service, gradually that nature will get purified and transformed. And that is what we are looking for. We cannot give up that nature. Krishna has given us a set of qualities, right? Some modes that we have, that we have come into this world with. Arjuna, that was Arjuna's position. He says, I want to go away to the forest. And Krishna is saying, no, you cannot. You're born with this mode where you are a warrior. So if you go away, it's going to be artificial. So you just do the best you can, and then Krishna will gradually purify that particular nature.
Yeah, passion is kind of an energy, and it has to be guided by goodness and more by spiritual goodness. And therefore, like any activity we do, we want to be always guided by scriptures and Guru. And ignorance, like misbehaving with people and all that, that is all because we have that ignorance within us. So that comes out at different times. And it has nothing to do with passion, that I'm passionate about something and being passionate about something and misbehaving with others, it doesn't go hand in hand together. Just a manifestation of our ignorance. And as long as we are guided by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, then we will come back to that goodness. Even if we misbehave, then we'll realize our mistake, that and then a person can correct that behavior. But if the person is not guided by goodness and Guru, Sadhu, then they will just continue deeper and deeper into that.
Actually, in Ayurveda, I was thinking of two things. One is that in Ayurveda, we talk about three kinds of bodily or psychological and also physical humors, right? Kapha, Pitta, and Dosha. Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. And so the Pitta dosha is like the fire energy within us, very, very fiery. But the good thing with that fire energy is that it can, those kind of people, they make very good leaders, and they have very sharp intelligence, and they can really discriminate, and all that, all the fiery element. But if that same Pitta person is in Satogun, then they make very enlightened and very inspired leaders. If they are in Rajogun or mode of passion, then you don't really want to be around them because they would be very difficult people to deal with, very critical, very harsh, right? And if they're in the mode of ignorance, then God save the world, right? Because, so it's the same fire, but depending on which mode, we can redirect that energy. And of course, if the person is spiritual, then that becomes what in the Bhagavad Gita we say the Raja Rishi or the saintly kings, right? And the same thing with Enneagrams. We've talked about that the Enneagram, they have all these different personality types. Now, within each personality types, there are different characteristics that one can connect with. But then there is a healthy, there's a healthy side to it, and then there's an unhealthy side to it, right? So someone could be a giver, but even a giver could have an unhealthy side to them, which means that they're giving with some attachment and manipulative, and like that for each one. So like that, we have to find our healthy balance, and know that it's a gradual process. I hope that
Yeah.
helps.
Mataji, I had a small question.
Yeah.
In presence of certain people, you feel that the mode of goodness is it comes out more easily, and presence of certain people, you kind of, your ego comes out without even you acknowledging it. It comes out like, so some people have that effect on you that they're able to, make that mode of goodness dominant. So like, how do I not get affected by all different kinds of people, like, and stay in the mode of goodness? Like, irrespective of how much I try, there are certain people who make my ego pop, and I have to subdue it and take so much effort that it doesn't come out.
Well, thinking of these people as our gurus, because they are showing us the mirror, what's in our heart. It's not because of them, but it's what is within us that is coming out. Of course, they are helping us to bring it out. That's one way, and kind of thanking them that, yeah, this is something that I have to work within myself. Next time, can I do a little bit better? And then being in the mode of service, not taking things personally, I guess that's another way.
Yeah, it's a whole process of purification. There is no superficial or easy answer. Of course, one could use some skills that you pause and you think and then you respond and all that. But ultimately, the real change happens when we undergo this process of transformation. And as we start, when we start developing this deeper attachment to Krishna, then we can see everyone and everything in relationship to Krishna. And then when we can see that actually everyone is a part and parcel of Krishna, and that there is, just like you never get angry at the instruments, right? So everyone's an instrument, and Krishna is facilitating this for me to learn something. And in my own life, I've always seen that, every such person has come with such a great gift. And, I may not, if I don't receive the gift, then I don't get the gift. But there is a great lesson there. And it's also described that the greatness of a person is actually tested by how well they can handle or how well they can tolerate provocative situation. So one has to, that is, and I think when we talked about qualities, that's what we talked about, that we have to, work towards developing these qualities of tolerance and patience and humility. But it's not superficial. It comes about as a result of associating with one who has all good qualities. So Krishna and Krishna's devotees. The more we associate with them, the more we will also start automatically developing those qualities. And one will see that everything else, the reason why we get annoyed sometimes is because there's some fear, some attachment. Maybe we are attached to how things should be, and so on and so forth. So once one realizes that it's really my own weakness, that is contributing to this, then we can actually move past and not become, not have so many buttons, I guess.
I guess as Krishna was saying earlier, that seeing in every situation and every activity how these modes are working, once we start becoming an observer of modes within ourselves and within others, then we stop identifying with the modes that I'm like this, right? We have such a strong bonding with these modes that, oh, I'm this kind of a person, and this is how I like things to be done. So we have cemented our identity with these modes. So once we become an observer, then we kind of disassociate with these modes. I am not mode of goodness. I am not mode of passion. I am not mode of ignorance. I am something different.
And also we are able to see the other person
also
in the same light, that the reason why this person is acting in this way at this point is because he's under the influence of the mode of passion and ignorance. So we don't take it personally. Just like if I met somebody and somebody was under the influence of some alcohol or some kind of substance, then I would say, all right, this guy is under the influence right now. So that's why he's speaking like this. So we understand, we also learn how to see people, not just as a manifestation of the particular mode that they are in, but seeing the spirit soul within. So it's a training, Pratibha, just like anything else. It's a training, and one can get trained up in that to the point where one is no longer affected. And just the desire that you have is actually very auspicious.
Thank you, Mataji, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
I guess identifying these situations where we get agitated by different people and thinking about it and working on it and praying to Krishna, And if we can overcome that, then that's a great victory.
So let's move. I think we should finish this.
Yeah,
chapter
let's
today.
finish this chapter.
Yeah.
Let's move on. 22, 25. Now Krishna is responding. What is his behavior? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental. So just neutral is not sufficient, he has to be transcendental. Knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is so Krishna is going to go like from gross to subtle. So earth, stone, gold, this is all gross stuff. So he's equal to that, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor. So it's even more difficult to do that. Who treats alike both friend and enemy, even more difficult. Who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature.
Oh, nice. I was just thinking of this one story of Lord Shiva, where one time Lord Shiva and Parvati, they were walking, and so Lord Shiva had this devotee who was very, very poor, and so Parvati kept telling Shiva that, why don't you give him some money? This is because he doesn't want any. So Parvati insisted. She said, no, you must give him something. He's really, really poverty stricken. So Lord Shiva said, okay, why don't I show you? So then, on this couple, they're walking on some pathway, and so Lord Shiva puts some gold on the way, and so the man, he sees that there is some gold lying ahead, and so he immediately runs forward, and then he starts putting covering it with dirt, thinking that I'm not interested in this, but what if my wife sees it and she gets drawn to it? So the wife comes, she catches up and she says, what are you doing? And then she looks at her husband and she says, why are you covering dirt with dirt? So then Parvati understands that actually the couple is completely transcendental and have no attachment,
So these are symptoms for ourselves, and then for to see in others, and especially to see in ourselves. And then finally, Krishna here, he answers how to overcome the forces of nature. Because just by thinking about it, just by becoming an observer, just by mind and our willpower, we cannot transcend these modes of nature. You need actually something else. And that's what Krishna is revealing. This is a very famous verse. Those of you who want to memorize it. Mamcha yo abhyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sargunan samatitayetam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So unfailing in all circumstances has to be kind of elaborated, because when we are beginning, it feels like a tall order. How can I be unfailing in all circumstances? So what it means is that even if you fail, how do we respond to the failure? Do we just kind of fail and okay, give up? Okay, I'm not good for this, or I can't do this. Or we come back, say, okay, I failed, but I'll come back and start where we, just like a child when they're starting to learn to walk, then they fall down so many times, but they don't give up. And very soon they're running. So unfailing in all circumstances means unfailing to also take shelter of Krishna when we fail, when we fall down, taking shelter of devotees when we fall down. It's perfectly all right to fall down when we are, this is like practice bhakti for us right now. So that's what unfailing, so very soon at once transcends the modes of material nature. When Krishna sees that effort, that my devotee is not giving up on me, he's not giving up on bhakti, he's not giving up on devotees, then that is basically unfailing.
And, this is a question that comes up again and again, that, sometimes we see that in spite of practicing, right, we may still make mistakes. And so this engagement in full devotional service, Krishna speaks about that earlier, that if a person is engaged in full devotional service, then even if he makes a mistake, that person is still considered to be saintly by me. Why? Because if he's engaged in full devotional service, just like fire, right? When you put something in fire, it may say take some time for something to burn away completely, but the effect of fire will eventually burn away all impurities. So same way, when we, and that's actually, because sometimes people say, oh, I don't have feelings right now, right? I'm not experiencing that love. But more important than experiencing the love right now is actually to engage in what is described as Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which means regulated devotional service, which means devotional service in practice, right? So sometimes, and this is something that, when you learn music or you learn any art, in the beginning, they give you a violin or some instrument and they say you play, right? And it doesn't sound nice. It doesn't sound like the kind of sound that is, made by the great masters. But then you just sit down with it every day and you still keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying to follow the process, that eventually one can then start, playing that instrument very beautifully. So being in full devotional service doesn't mean that I have attained my full, experience of the deepest ecstasies and the deepest love. It simply means that I'm engaging in the process with my full heart, right? And even though I fail, but I still continue on. For such a person, one will immediately come to the level of Brahman.
And I guess from this verse, Krishna is also clarifying, because he has described so many different paths in the Bhagavad Gita, like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. So what Krishna is saying here is that you cannot transcend the modes of nature through any other path, Jnana Yoga or Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, because the modes are so powerful, sooner or later they will catch up to you. So there has to be an element of bhakti in your practice.
Yeah, because I was just going to say that, because Krishna says earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, right, that Devi Esha Gunamayi, that this material nature is actually very difficult to overcome. So this material nature is impossible actually. And Prabhupada also says that, you cannot really, like if your hands are bound, then you cannot really open yourself up. You need someone who is unbound, who can come and open you up, right? So in all the other processes, one is trying to unbound oneself using one's own either physical strength, as in the case of Ashtanga Yoga, or in Jnana Yoga, using the strength of one's mind and intelligence. So, but it's impossible, because this energy, like right now, we are dealing with just a tiny, tiny, tiny spark of this energy, this material energy. And it's been a year and we have all been, we are all stuck at home. So we can see how powerful this energy is. But because Krishna is completely in control of this energy, when one takes shelter of Krishna, then this energy immediately stops acting on us.
And so this is the last verse. Krishna talks about, and Brahmano hi pratisthaham amritasya vyasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So I guess Krishna spoke about Brahma Bhujaya Kalpate in the previous verse. So he's just describing that Brahman, one who practices bhakti, he automatically achieves the benefit of Brahman realization. Is already included within. And because Brahman is part of Krishna's effulgence, so and one becomes free from the modes of nature. So that's how this chapter ends.
All right. So thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
And it's the same numbers that you have from Maryland, right? That I
Yes,
can.
sir.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Hare Krishna.